Moving into Willow Creek Estates seemed like a dream come true. The manicured lawns, pristine sidewalks, and coordinated mailboxes painted a picture of suburban perfection. What I didn't anticipate was meeting Karen Morrison, the HOA president who would transform my peaceful retirement into a calculated game of chess. Having spent 30 years as a corporate attorney specializing in real estate law, I thought I'd left strategic maneuvering behind. How wrong I was. Karen made her presence known within 48 hours of our arrival. She appeared at my door with a clipboard, measuring tape, and the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "Good morning. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Karen, your HOA president. I need to discuss several violations I've already identified with your property." The violations included my son Jake's bicycle being parked 2 inches too close to the sidewalk, my welcome mat being burgundy instead of the approved earth tones, and my porch light being 15 watts brighter than the maximum allowed wattage. I remained diplomatic, explaining that we'd just moved in, and were still familiarizing ourselves with the extensive HOA guidelines. Karen's response was swift and unforgiving. "The rules exist for everyone's benefit. Ignorance isn't an excuse. You have 24 hours to correct these issues or face fines." She handed me a stack of citations totaling $350 before clicking away on her sensible heels. My wife Sandra tried to keep the peace, but I could see the stress building as Karen's daily visits continued. She measured our grass height with a ruler, photographed our garbage cans from multiple angles, and somehow always found new infractions. The doorbell became a source of dread, especially for my 16-year-old son Jake, who bore the brunt of her scrutiny simply for existing as a teenager in her perfectly ordered world. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was reviewing case files in my home office when I heard glass shattering, followed immediately by Karen's voice shrieking from across the street. I rushed outside to find her standing in her front yard, pointing dramatically at her broken living room window while Jake emerged from our garage, basketball in hand. "Your delinquent son just threw that ball through my window. I saw it with my own eyes." Karen's voice carried across the entire neighborhood, drawing curious faces to windows and doorways. Jake stood frozen, confusion written across his face as neighbors began gathering. "I was just shooting hoops in our driveway. I didn't throw anything at your house, Mr. Morrison." I examined the scene carefully. The window was indeed shattered, but something felt off about Karen's accusation. The angle was wrong. For a ball thrown from our driveway to reach her window, it would need to travel in an impossible trajectory, defying basic physics. More telling was the complete absence of the basketball anywhere near her property, and the fact that Jake was holding it when he emerged from our garage, responding to the commotion. "Karen, let's think about this logically. If Jake had thrown the ball hard enough to break your window, where is the ball now?" I asked, keeping my voice measured and professional. Her eyes darted nervously before she doubled down on her story. "He obviously retrieved it before I could get outside. I'm calling the police and filing an insurance claim. Your son is going to pay for this damage." Within 20 minutes, Officer Rodriguez arrived to take statements. I watched Karen weave her tale with theatrical precision, complete with hand gestures and crocodile tears. When it was Jake's turn to speak, his honest confusion was evident to everyone except Karen, who interrupted repeatedly with accusations of lying and demanding immediate justice. After the officer left with his report, I spent the afternoon conducting my own investigation. Years of depositions and evidence gathering had taught me to look beyond the obvious. I examined the trajectory angles, measured distances, and interviewed neighbors who might have witnessed the incident. What I discovered was illuminating. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down had been watering her garden, and saw Karen in her living room just before the glass broke. More importantly, she noticed Karen's gardener had been using a leaf blower near the front windows, creating significant air pressure changes. The pieces began forming a disturbing picture. That evening, I knocked on Karen's door with a formal letter outlining my son's innocence and requesting she retract her accusations. Her response was predictably explosive. "Your criminal son broke my window, and now you're trying to intimidate me with your lawyer nonsense. I'm filing complaints with the HOA board, the police, and anyone else who will listen." Over the following weeks, Karen launched a campaign of harassment that would have impressed military strategists. She filed 17 separate HOA violations against our property, called code enforcement twice weekly, and even contacted the school district claiming Jake was a dangerous influence on other children. The stress was affecting my entire family, but I maintained my professional composure while gathering evidence of her increasingly unhinged behavior. The truth revealed itself during a conversation with her insurance adjuster, who mentioned finding glass fragments outside the window rather than inside, suggesting the break originated from within the house. Combined with security footage from a neighbor's camera showing Karen alone in her living room at the time of the incident, and her gardener's testimony about the leaf blower malfunction that startled her, the picture became crystal clear. Karen had accidentally broken her own window, probably by dropping something or striking it during her startled reaction to the sudden noise. Rather than admit the mistake, she seized upon the opportunity to target my son, knowing a teenage boy made a convenient scapegoat. The calculated cruelty of framing an innocent child revealed the depths of her vindictive nature. I could have simply exposed her lie and demanded an apology, but Karen's month-long harassment campaign had crossed lines that required a more comprehensive response. She had weaponized the HOA rules, legal system, and neighborhood gossip network against my family with ruthless efficiency. Her actions demanded an equally strategic countermove that would permanently neutralize her ability to terrorize other residents. My background in real estate law and 3 decades of high-stakes negotiations had provided me with both the knowledge and resources necessary for what I had in mind. Karen's obsession with property values and neighborhood control would become the instruments of her own downfall, but she wouldn't realize it until far too late to matter. The first phase involved a careful review of all HOA documents, county records, and municipal codes governing our subdivision. What I found was fascinating. Willow Creek Estates had been developed in phases over 15 years, creating a complex web of easements, deed restrictions, and overlapping jurisdictions that most residents never bothered to understand. Karen certainly didn't comprehend the legal intricacies of the empire. She thought she ruled. More intriguing was discovering that Karen's own property contained multiple violations of the original deed restrictions that had never been properly amended. Her prized rose garden extended 18 inches beyond the approved landscaping boundary. Her detached storage shed exceeded the maximum allowable square footage by 47 square feet. Most significantly, her driveway expansion from 2019 violated setback requirements that would have required board approval she never obtained. But those violations were merely appetizers for the main course I had planned. My research revealed that Parcel 743, a narrow strip of land running along the back boundary of Karen's property, had been improperly conveyed during the original subdivision process. The title company had made an error that went unnoticed for over a decade, creating a gap in the chain of ownership that rendered that land technically available for purchase from the county. The brilliant irony was that Parcel 743 contained the easement providing access to Karen's backyard pool and the utility connections serving her house. Without that access, her property would be effectively landlocked from the rear, and any modifications to utilities would require permission from whoever owned the easement. I spent 2 weeks quietly navigating the bureaucratic maze of county offices, filing the necessary paperwork to claim ownership of the abandoned parcel through adverse possession proceedings. The process required patience and precision, but the legal pathway was clearly established. For the bargain price of back taxes and filing fees totaling $837, I gained control over Karen's access to her own backyard. The second phase involved a more creative interpretation of HOA enforcement procedures. Karen had weaponized the violation reporting system against my family, generating dozens of frivolous complaints that wasted everyone's time and created unnecessary stress. Her own property's numerous violations provided the perfect opportunity to demonstrate how thorough enforcement actually worked when applied fairly and consistently. I began documenting every single deviation from HOA standards on Karen's property, with the same obsessive attention to detail she had shown mine. The rose garden boundary violation became a daily photo series tracking seasonal growth patterns. The oversized shed was measured and documented from multiple angles with professional surveying equipment. The unpermitted driveway expansion was researched through county permitting records going back 5 years. Each violation was carefully photographed, measured, and documented according to the exact procedures Karen herself had established during her tenure as HOA president. The irony was exquisite. She had created the enforcement mechanisms that would now be turned against her with surgical precision. But the true masterpiece was yet to come. My analysis of HOA governing documents revealed a fascinating provision buried in subsection 12 of the Architectural Review Standards. Any property owner who filed more than 10 enforcement complaints in a single calendar year would be subject to enhanced scrutiny, including mandatory quarterly inspections and expedited violation processing. Karen had filed 23 complaints against various neighbors this year alone, 17 of them targeting my family. Her own rule meant that her property would now face the same intensive scrutiny she had inflicted on others, but with one crucial difference. Her violations were real, well documented, and would require expensive corrections to achieve compliance. The third phase required patience and perfect timing. I waited until Karen left for her annual 2-week vacation, visiting her sister in Phoenix, before implementing the final elements of my plan. The timing was crucial because Arizona's distance would prevent her from responding quickly to the cascade of legal notifications that would soon flood her mailbox. While Karen was away, I filed the completed adverse possession claim for Parcel 743, along with a comprehensive HOA complaint documenting all violations on her property. The complaint included professional photographs, survey measurements, and detailed citations of the specific rules she had violated. Her own enforcement procedures required the board to act within 15 business days of receiving such thorough documentation. Simultaneously, I submitted a formal request to the county for a boundary survey of the entire subdivision, citing concerns about improperly maintained property lines affecting multiple homeowners. The survey would officially confirm my ownership of the easement parcel and identify the exact extent of Karen's unpermitted improvements. The beauty of the plan was its complete adherence to every rule and procedure Karen herself had established. I was simply following her own system with the same meticulous attention to detail she had demanded from others. She had created the perfect weapon for her own destruction, and now it was being wielded against her with surgical precision. Karen returned from vacation to find her mailbox overflowing with certified letters, legal notices, and HOA correspondence. The first wave included violation notices for all documented infractions on her property, each requiring correction within 30 days or facing escalating fines. The second wave contained the boundary survey results confirming my legal ownership of Parcel 743 and demanding removal of her encroaching landscaping within 48 hours. The final wave delivered the coup de grace, a formal notification that her property's rear access easement was now under new ownership and would require a licensing agreement for continued use. The licensing fee was set at exactly the amount she had demanded as damages for her self-inflicted window, $350 per month, with a minimum 5-year commitment required. I watched from my office window as Karen stood in her driveway, surrounded by scattered legal documents, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and finally dawning comprehension. She clutched the easement ownership papers in trembling hands, her eyes darting between the documents and the narrow strip of land that had suddenly become her prison. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her own obsession with property control had blinded her to the legal vulnerabilities in her domain. Her harassment campaign against my family had triggered the very enforcement mechanisms she had weaponized against others. Her lie about my son breaking her window had launched a chain reaction that would cost her thousands of dollars in corrections, fines, and licensing fees. Karen's mouth opened and closed silently as she processed the elegant symmetry of her downfall. She had broken her own window, blamed my innocent son, and used that lie to justify weeks of escalating harassment. Now her own rules, her own system, and her own vindictive nature had constructed the cage that would contain her for years to come.